One of the tools that I would normally use when dealing with database, especially if I'm using my SQL for my database, is MySQL Workbench. So today I'm going to show you how to install, and also I'm going to do a little bit of background when it comes to my SQL Workbench. So the current version of my SQL Workbench, by the way, is Workbench 8.0 Community Edition. So what I'll be installing on my machine or on my computer is MySQL uh, Workbench 8.0 Community Edition. So this is actually its installer. So let me just try to click next. So this is where this is the typical Windows application. You can specify also where you wanted to install or where you wanted it to be located. But in my case, I would just have it on the default path, which is under my program files. Just click next, complete custom, then just click next, install. Okay. So MySQL Workbench is one of those tools that that's what I've said, normally use on a daily basis, especially if I'm dealing with um, MySQL databases. So I would normally pair it with the one in XAMPP. I'm not a big fan of PHP although I have been using PHP especially if I'm using it, especially if I'm dealing with web-based application. So if I'm going to edit databases that are found on hosting websites, I would normally be using my PHP So I'm also quite comfortable in using PHP But if I'm going to work on my Windows machine or in my computer, local computer, I would normally use MySQL Workbench, or this is one of the tools that I have been previously using. Okay, so let's try to launch. So one of the things that I've noticed with my SQL Workbench is that it takes a little bit of time to load compared to other Windows based uh, MySQL editor. So like for example, if you're wanted something which is a little bit faster, you can use maybe Heidi SQL, or currently I'm also using DBForge as my primary database editor. So this is actually my SQL Workbench. Let me just try to, okay. So this is actually my SQL Workbench. So I've already added here the default uh, connection, which is on my localhost root. Okay, let me just try to turn on my XAMPP so that at least you can see what is inside my, how to use this one. So there's no need for me to turn on my Apache. All I have to do is just turn on, by the way, my SQL. Okay. So if you wanted to create another connection, let's say for example, there's two databases that you need to work, or there's two servers that you need to work on, you can just click the plus sign, and you will be asked a new database setup, or new connection setup. So you can specify uh, the connection name and method, host name, port number, root. So in my case, there's no password for my username. So you can also specify also the default schema and so on. So let me just try to use this one because I've been using this one for quite a while now. So this is actually the editor of my SQL Workbench. So on the left navigator, this is actually your navigator. So this is where you can find all of the databases that is currently installed in your system or is currently present in your system. So if I'm going to expand, let's say for example this one, you can actually see the tables. These are the tables, okay. And if we're going to expand the table, you can also see the different fields on that particular table. So you can also see the foreign key, the triggers. You can also add the views. If you're going to create, all you have to do is just click create, then view. If you wanted to create, by the way, a table, all you have to do is right click, then create table. Okay. Then right click store procedure if you wanted to create a store procedure, as well as functions. So um, that's actually your navigator. Now on the right panel of your MySQL workbench, this is where you can edit the SQL code, or this is where you can test your SQL code. So let's say for example, let's just try to use this particular table. Now to select this particular table, or to select the table or select the database, all you have to do is just double click. As you've noticed, this particular database is in bold letters. So currently this is selected. So if I wanted to select CSLDB, all I have to do is just double click. Then this particular database is already selected. So let's say try to use this one. Okay, this let's try to use test. Okay, let's try to double click test. Now, as you've noticed, test doesn't have any database. There's only one. It doesn't have any tables yet. So if I'm going to right click here, then create table. Okay, let's try to create a table. This is how you can actually create a table in MySQL Workbench or in Workbench. All you have to do is just right click then create table. So let's say let's try to put here sample table. Okay. Then this is where you can specify also the column name. Okay. So let's say ID. Okay. So data type. Then let's try to set it as our primary key, not null, unique, and auto increment. Okay. Then another one. Let's try to add another one. So to make it first name. Let's try to leave it as is varchar and so on. Okay. So you can also try to add comments. You can also try to you can also change the different properties of the table and so on. So let's try to click apply. Okay. Now you can see that this is the it generates an SQL statement. So if you want, you can copy actually this particular SQL statement and you can edit it also on uh, your favorite text editor. But in my case, since this is just a test for testing purposes, I won't be copying this one. So all I have to do is click apply. Okay, then just try to click finish. Okay, so this time we already have our sample table found on our test database. Now, one of the things that I actually like about Workbench that let me just try to show you. Let's try to go back to home. Then try to create. Let's try to use this one. Now this is actually where we can create a model. Okay, so try to create this. Let's just try to create a sample database model. So let's try to add a diagram. And so this is where you can create your database diagram. Okay, so let's say I'm going to create, let's try to create a new table. Okay, then drag it here. You already have our table one, so I'm going to double click. Then you can specify also the name of the table here. Okay, so let's try to change this one to um, test table. Okay, again, let's try to use ID. And let's try to set it as primary key. And auto increment. Okay, so also to add first name varchar, then last name. Try to set it as maybe 25. Uh, varchar 25. Okay, so we already have our test table. Now, this is one of the things that as what I've said, this is one of the things that I like about my SQL Workbench. So I can do, basically what I can do is I can just right click here, then copy SQL to clipboard. Okay. So what I basically did was, okay, let me just try to show you, copy SQL to clipboard. Let's try to go back here, try to go back here, then, okay, we're currently on our test table, test database. Then you can just right click, then paste. So automatically what it would do is it would create an SQL statement. Then let's just try to execute. Okay. Uh, okay, so we generated an error. So let's try to change this one to um, test. Okay. Let's try to execute again. Okay. Create table test if not exist. Okay, let's try to reload. Refresh all. Sample table. Okay, so we already have our test table here at the bottom. So that's one of the that's one of the things that I actually like about MySQL Workbench, that we can create directly from our entity relational or on our EER diagram and just copy paste the code, or just yeah, we can convert it directly to SQL code or SQL statements. So that's one of the things that is not found on any other, as far as I know, is not found on any other uh, window-based MySQL editor. Okay. So, as far as I know, by the way, as far as I know. So, maybe there's also another, maybe on DB4, the paid version has a particular feature. Uh, actually, I have also been using DB Forge. Let me just try to show you. DB Forge Studio. Uh, for quite some time now. I shifted from my SQL Workbench to the DB4 Studio, uh, and I haven't found that particular feature. Okay, but that's one of the features that I actually love about my SQL Workbench. Now, okay, let's just click don't save. Now, another feature that I find interesting in MySQL Workbench is this one. So you can also create a utility. So copy as PHP code, connect to server. Okay, so let's try to copy. Okay, let's just try to paste it here. Okay, so you can specify the different properties. So we have your host, port number, user, password, and DB name test. Okay, and this one is also not found on DBForge, HiDSQL, as far as I know. Okay, so scripting, you have tools, configuration, okay, restore copy. Okay, now for configuration, we can also do some backup. Okay, uh, can just specify, we can just actually set it, we can back up our database. Although there's one feature that I haven't found or haven't explored it yet, wherein we can back it up on a specific time. Let's say, for example, after 5 o'clock, we try to back up our database. That particular feature is one of those things that I really wanted to explore using my SQL Workbench. Or if not, then I have to go through the terminal. Okay. So, I would suggest, guys, that you try my SQL Workbench so that at least it will be, so that you can have a first-hand experience on how to use MySQL Workbench and try to compare it also to other MySQL window-based editor that you have used or that is currently using. If you find the contents of this blog useful or interesting, don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button. And if you wanted to be notified every time a new video is uploaded, don't forget to hit the bell notification button. Thanks.